Have you ever felt that sudden surge of fear, the kind that paralyzes your every thought and action? Whether it's the fear of failure, the anxiety of the unknown, or even the heart-wrenching fear of losing someone or something dear to you, fear can feel like an invisible weight pressing down on you. It holds you back from reaching your true potential, from living a life of purpose and freedom. But what if I told you that there's a way to break free from this invisible grip? What if I told you that Buddhism, a profound spiritual practice that has guided millions of people toward peace, wisdom, and enlightenment for over 2,500 years, holds the keys to overcoming fear and transforming your life into one of clarity, calm, and courage? What if the solution to your fears lies not in fighting them head-on, but in understanding them, in seeing them for what they truly are, and in shifting your perspective in a way that dissolves their hold on you? Imagine a life where fear no longer dictates your choices, where you can walk through every challenge with confidence and inner peace. What would that life look like for you? Today, on Zen Mind Journey, we're going to explore 6 powerful Buddhist lessons that will help you stop your fears from ruling your life and teach you how to embrace your true potential. These lessons are not just ancient wisdom. They're practical tools for modern life. They offer transformative insights that, if embraced, can fundamentally change the way you experience fear, and in turn, how you live your life. Fear, whether it's a mild worry or a crippling dread, can keep us trapped in cycles of stress, doubt, and uncertainty. But the truth is, fear is not an insurmountable obstacle. It's a natural part of being human. And just like any other emotion, it can be understood, transformed, and transcended with the right tools. So, what if you could see fear not as a wall, but as a stepping stone towards something greater? What if every fear you faced was a signpost pointing toward growth and transformation? In today's video, we will break down these 6 Buddhist teachings and show you exactly how they can help you move beyond your fears and live the life you've always dreamed of, one filled with freedom, peace, and courage. Whether you're struggling with a fear of failure, a fear of loss, or the anxiety that often comes with change, these teachings will give you the tools to free yourself from the grip of fear. So, get ready to dive deep into these transformative lessons. As you watch, take a moment to reflect on the fears that hold you back. Recognize that you are not alone in facing these struggles and that you have the power to overcome them. Before we get started, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment below to let us know how these lessons resonate with you. Your support helps us bring more of this powerful content to you and helps us build a community of like-minded individuals on this journey toward peace, wisdom, and personal transformation. Now, if you're ready to leave fear behind and step into a life of true freedom, let's dive into these Buddhist teachings and begin the journey toward a life without limits. Lesson 1. Embrace impermanence, anicca. One of the foundational principles in Buddhism is the idea of impermanence, or anicca. This concept teaches that everything in life is transient. Our thoughts, emotions, circumstances, and even our fears. While it may seem simple on the surface, this truth is profoundly transformative, offering deep insights into how we experience the world around us. Understanding impermanence helps us to let go of attachments and move through life with more peace and clarity. Fear is something that almost everyone experiences at some point, and it's often rooted in our resistance to change. When we cling to the idea that certain things should remain the same, fear inevitably arises. For example, we might fear losing our job, our health, or a loved one. Even the mere thought of losing these things can trigger feelings of anxiety, panic, and dread. This fear is driven by our attachment to stability and predictability, which are illusions in themselves. Life is constantly changing, and nothing is guaranteed to stay the same forever. The Buddha taught that attachment to permanence is the root cause of suffering. Our attachment is the mental habit of wanting things to stay exactly as they are, or to remain in a fixed state. When we start fearing the loss of something, we forget that change is the nature of life. The truth is that everything we experience is in a constant state of flux. The only true constant in life is change itself. If we could fully internalize this truth, we would free ourselves from a lot of unnecessary suffering, because fear is in many ways a product of resisting change. Take a moment to reflect on your own life. Have you ever found yourself clinging to something because you were afraid of losing it? Maybe it was a relationship that you thought defined your happiness, or a job that gave you a sense of security. These attachments can create a false sense of stability, but ultimately, they reinforce the illusion that things should stay the same, that we have control over outcomes, and that life can be predictable. When these things are threatened, fear arises, sometimes overwhelming us. But the reality is that change is inevitable, and no matter how hard we try to hold on to things, they are subject to the same ebb and flow of life's rhythms. When we understand that nothing in life is permanent, not even our fears, it becomes easier to loosen our grip on these attachments. Fear loses its power when we accept that everything, including our struggles, will eventually pass. This doesn't mean that we will never experience pain or difficulty. Rather, it's about seeing these moments through the lens of impermanence, recognizing that they are temporary. The pain you feel today will not last forever, just as the happiness you experience today is also fleeting. This balance helps to soften the grip of fear and encourages us to live with more equanimity, knowing that all things are temporary. Think back to a difficult situation you've faced in the past, whether it was a personal loss, a failure, or a major life transition. At the time, it likely felt overwhelming. You may have felt like you were trapped in a cycle of despair or anxiety. But with time, you found a way to heal, to move forward, and to find peace. This is the essence of anicca, the understanding that nothing stays the same forever. Over time, even the toughest moments pass, and we adapt. What seemed insurmountable becomes just another chapter in the story of our lives. By embracing impermanence, we stop fearing the future and start living in the present. When we stop resisting change and accept that everything, good or bad, is in a state of flux, we open ourselves up to a more peaceful way of being. We can trust that whatever happens will change with time, and we no longer need to hold on tightly to the illusion of permanence. Instead, we can focus on living fully in the present moment, with less anxiety about what the future may hold. The knowledge that this too shall pass gives us the strength to navigate even the most uncertain moments with calm and grace. In essence, impermanence offers a way to transcend fear by recognizing that everything we experience is temporary. By accepting this truth, we gain a new perspective on life, one that is freer, more adaptable, and more in tune with the natural flow of existence. The next time you feel overwhelmed by fear or anxiety, remind yourself that this moment is just a fleeting part of the larger picture. It will pass, and so too will any fear that you may face. Lesson 2. See the illusion of fear. Fear is often much more than an emotional response. It's a creation of our minds. One of Buddha's central teachings is that much of what we experience in life is an illusion, and fear fits perfectly into this concept. Fear does not exist independently of us. It's a product of the mental stories we create. These stories are often based on hypothetical scenarios, typically full of what-ifs that haven't even occurred yet. We allow our minds to conjure up worst-case situations, and this can make us feel trapped, helpless, and anxious. At its core, fear is a psychological pattern that we can begin to unravel. Let's break this down with a simple example. Imagine you're standing at the edge of a cliff. You look down, and instantly your heart starts racing, your palms become sweaty, and your thoughts begin to spiral. What if I fall? What if I slip? These what-ifs flood your mind and seem to take control, making the situation feel dangerous and threatening. But in reality, you're not falling, you're not in danger, and the edge of the cliff is just a spot you're standing at. The fear you're experiencing is not based on any actual danger, but rather on your mind anticipating something that hasn't happened. This is the essence of fear. It's a mental pattern that we've internalized. Fear, like a shadow, only has power over us because we allow it to grow. As soon as we shine the light of awareness on it, it dissipates. This realization is key to understanding that fear is not a fact, but an imagined possibility that our minds create. The more we confront our fears and step into situations that trigger them, the less control those fears have over us. Take a moment to reflect on times when fear has held you back from something. Maybe it was a new job opportunity, making a bold decision, or speaking in front of a crowd. Before facing the situation, the fear you felt was real, but only in your mind. You might have imagined all sorts of catastrophic outcomes, making a mistake, embarrassing yourself, or failing. Yet when you actually went through with it, you realized that the worst-case scenario you played out in your head never came true. What you feared was never as bad as your mind had made it seem. That's the illusion of fear. It's based on imagined outcomes that often don't align with reality. Fear thrives in the unknown. It's easy to create mental scenarios when we can't see the full picture or predict what will happen. Our minds tend to fill in those gaps with negative possibilities, which only heightens our anxiety. However, when we take action and face those fears, we start to see the illusion for what it is, a thought, not a fact. In those moments, the fear loses its grip. For example, consider a situation where you felt nervous before a job interview. Leading up to it, your mind might have been overwhelmed with fears of failure, not being prepared, or saying the wrong thing. But once you were in the interview, you realized that you could handle it, that the fear was only holding you back before you even began. When we begin to challenge our fears and step into the unknown, we gain confidence. This doesn't mean that fear will disappear completely, but we begin to recognize it for what it is, a mental construct, not a reflection of reality. Each time we face our fears, we weaken their power. The more we confront our anxieties, the more we understand that they are not absolute truths. They are merely thoughts that have been amplified by our imagination. The key to overcoming fear is in recognizing that it's not an external force, but something within us that we can change. Fear is like any other thought pattern. It can be altered with practice. By choosing to confront what frightens us, we dissolve its control over us and step into the present moment, where the reality is far less threatening than our imagined fears. In summary, fear is an illusion created by our minds, built from what-ifs and anticipated worst-case scenarios. It only holds power over us when we allow it to. But by confronting fear head-on and seeing it for what it truly is, just a thought, we can free ourselves from its hold and live with more clarity and peace. The next time you feel fear creeping in, remember that it's simply a mental pattern that can be unraveled. It's not real, it's just a thought passing through. And with each thought we challenge, we grow stronger in our ability to face the unknown with courage. Lesson 3. Practice mindfulness, sati. Mindfulness, or sati, is one of the most potent tools in Buddhism, especially when it comes to overcoming fear. At its core, mindfulness is the practice of being fully present in the moment, without distraction or judgment. The beauty of mindfulness lies in its simplicity. It teaches us to stay grounded in the here and now, rather than getting lost in our thoughts about the past or future. This ability to stay in the present moment is crucial when it comes to managing and eventually overcoming fear. Fear is often a result of dwelling on past mistakes, regrets, or unresolved issues, or worrying about what could happen in the future. We become consumed by hypothetical scenarios, and our minds start racing with what-ifs and worst-case outcomes. These fears, although often irrational, can feel very real in the moment. They can make us feel anxious, stressed, or paralyzed. However, when we practice mindfulness, we can break this cycle of anxiety and bring ourselves back to the present moment, where fear loses its power. When we are fully present in the moment, we can observe our thoughts and emotions without getting caught up in them. Fear-based thoughts often arise unexpectedly, and it's easy to fall into the trap of reacting to them impulsively. For example, if you're about to speak in public, you may feel a surge of fear. Your mind might start thinking, what if I embarrass myself? What if I forget what I need to say? These are all thoughts about potential outcomes that haven't happened yet. If we don't check these thoughts, they can escalate, leaving us overwhelmed with fear. Mindfulness, however, offers us a way to pause before reacting. Instead of automatically following the negative thought pattern, mindfulness gives us the space to recognize it, and from there, we can choose how to respond. This space allows us to practice non-attachment to our thoughts. When fear arises, we don't have to act on it immediately. By observing our fear with curiosity, we can start to understand it better. For instance, if we feel anxiety rising, mindfulness allows us to observe the sensation, perhaps tightness in the chest, shallow breathing, or sweaty palms, without judgment. Instead of labeling these sensations as something to fear, we can simply acknowledge them as temporary physical responses that are part of the body's natural reaction to fear. Over time, by regularly practicing mindfulness, we begin to desensitize ourselves to these responses, gradually gaining greater control over our emotions. By practicing mindfulness, we also learn to reduce the intensity of fear. Our fear often grows when we resist it or fight against it. The more we try to avoid or repress our fear, the more power we give it. Mindfulness teaches us to face our fears directly, to experience them fully without judgment, and to let them pass naturally. When we embrace the present moment, we stop adding fuel to the fire of fear. We don't allow ourselves to get caught in the loop of negative thinking, and we stop anticipating disaster. For example, imagine a person who struggles with anxiety. Each time they feel the tightening in their chest or the shortness of breath that accompanies anxiety, they might react by feeling more anxious about the anxiety itself. This reaction only increases the fear. However, through mindfulness, they can observe these sensations without judgment. Instead of spiraling into panic, they can recognize the fear for what it is, a temporary physical sensation that will pass. Over time, this practice of mindfulness can help reduce the intensity of their anxiety, enabling them to remain calm and composed in the face of fearful situations. Mindfulness also helps us stay focused on the present rather than the endless cycle of worries and uncertainties. When fear takes over, we can easily lose track of what's happening right in front of us. We might become consumed by thoughts about the future or dwell on past failures, missing the opportunities that are available to us right now. By practicing mindfulness, we learn to focus on what is immediately in front of us, the conversation we're having, the task we're performing, or the experience we're living. When we're fully engaged in the present moment, fear has no room to take hold. Ultimately, mindfulness helps us build a more balanced and peaceful relationship with fear. Instead of letting fear dictate our actions, we learn to coexist with it, observe it, and respond to it with calm and clarity. Fear becomes just another thought or sensation that arises, one that doesn't have to control us. By staying present and aware, we take back our power and stop fear from running the show. In summary, mindfulness offers us the opportunity to break free from the cycle of fear. By staying present and observing our thoughts and emotions without judgment, we create space to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. Mindfulness allows us to confront fear head-on, acknowledge it, and eventually let it go. Over time, this practice helps us build emotional resilience, equanimity, and greater peace in our lives. Lesson 4. Understand the nature of suffering, dukkha. In Buddhism, suffering, or dukkha, is one of the most fundamental and essential concepts. Buddha taught that suffering is not something rare or exceptional, but a natural and inevitable part of life. It is universal, something everyone experiences in some form. Understanding dukkha is not about resigning ourselves to suffering, but rather about acknowledging its role in shaping the human experience. Fear, like many other forms of suffering, arises when we encounter situations of uncertainty, loss, or perceived danger. When we recognize this, it can offer a sense of relief because we realize that suffering is not a personal flaw, but a shared aspect of existence. Fear, in particular, is a common type of suffering that many people struggle with. We experience fear when we face the unknown, when we feel we are at risk of losing something valuable, or when we perceive a potential danger. The reality is that fear is a response to the possibility of suffering. Whether it's the fear of losing a loved one, the fear of failure, or even the fear of physical harm. These anxieties stem from our attachment to what we have and the uncertainty of what the future holds. Fear is a manifestation of the natural human tendency to avoid discomfort, to seek safety, and to avoid loss. In this way, fear is closely tied to our desire for security and control. One of the key lessons in Buddhism is that dukkha is inevitable. It is not something that we can avoid or eliminate entirely. Life is filled with unpredictable changes, losses, and challenges, and we cannot escape suffering by merely wishing it away. In fact, the more we try to avoid suffering or fear, the more we may reinforce it as we constantly react to it and attempt to control it. But once we come to terms with the idea that suffering is a part of life, we can approach it with more acceptance, less resistance, and greater equanimity. For example, consider a person who is afraid of losing their job. The fear of financial instability, the unknown future, and the loss of security can feel overwhelming. But when the person reflects on the fact that fear of loss is a universal experience, that everyone at some point faces fear and uncertainty, it can help ease the anxiety. This recognition is powerful because it shifts the focus from a personal, isolating fear to a shared human experience. In this way, fear becomes less intimidating and more manageable. When we accept that fear is a natural part of life, we stop seeing it as a threat and begin to see it as something that can be faced and understood. Understanding dukkha in this way doesn't mean we should passively accept suffering without trying to improve our circumstances. Rather, it invites us to approach fear and suffering with a sense of compassion and wisdom. By understanding that suffering is universal, we can be more patient with ourselves and others as we navigate the challenges of life. Instead of resisting or avoiding fear, we can learn to engage with it, acknowledge it, and even grow through it. This recognition of suffering can be empowering. When we realize that fear is not an isolated experience, but a shared one, it takes away some of the shame or guilt we may feel about our fears. It also opens up a path toward greater resilience and acceptance. We can stop fighting against the fear and instead learn how to coexist with it in a healthy way. This shift in perspective allows us to face fear with less anxiety, more clarity, and greater peace of mind. Another important aspect of dukkha is that it teaches us about the impermanent nature of all things. Nothing lasts forever, and both joy and sorrow are transient. By understanding this, we can approach both our fears and our joys with a more balanced and detached mindset. We learn not to hold on to fear as if it is a permanent state, but to recognize that it, like all things, will eventually change. In conclusion, understanding the nature of suffering helps us accept fear as a natural part of life. Recognizing that fear is something everyone experiences takes away some of its power and helps us approach it with more equanimity. Rather than avoiding or resisting fear, we can face it with acceptance, knowing that it is not permanent and that it is a shared part of the human condition. By doing so, we can reduce the intensity of our fear and find a greater sense of peace and balance in the midst of uncertainty. Lesson 5. Let go of attachment. Tanha. One of the most profound teachings in Buddhism is the concept of letting go of attachment, known as tanha. Attachment arises from our tendency to crave or cling to things, be it material possessions, emotional experiences, or even aspects of our own identity. This attachment is a root cause of fear. When we become attached to something, we inevitably develop a fear of losing it, whether it's a relationship, our job, or even our own self-image. The more deeply we attach ourselves to these things, the greater our fear of their potential loss becomes. The core of this lesson is the understanding that fear is often a direct result of attachment. Our minds and hearts form emotional bonds with things, and when those things are threatened, we experience anxiety, insecurity, and fear. This creates a cycle where the fear of losing something is as consuming as the attachment itself. Whether it's the fear of losing a loved one, a financial security, or even our own sense of self-worth, attachment keeps us locked in a mental and emotional prison. We become so tied to the idea of preserving these things that we forget that true freedom lies in releasing them. The Buddhist teachings emphasize the importance of non-attachment, which is not the same as indifference. Non-attachment is not about detaching ourselves from love, care, or concern for others. It's about releasing the need to cling to them as if they're the sole source of our happiness or stability. We can still care deeply about people, experiences, and things, but we stop relying on them for our ultimate sense of well-being. Non-attachment allows us to experience life more fully without the anxiety that comes from fearing loss. Non-attachment, therefore, offers a form of liberation. When we stop attaching our happiness to external circumstances, we free ourselves from the constant worry about what might happen next. We come to understand that our true sense of security lies within ourselves, not in the external world. We can enjoy relationships, material wealth, and even our personal achievements without clinging to them for dear life. By practicing non-attachment, we cultivate a sense of peace and acceptance that allows us to move through life with greater equanimity and less fear. Consider the example of a person who is deeply afraid of losing a relationship. This fear of loss might create a sense of anxiety or insecurity in the person's life. They may feel like their entire sense of happiness and well-being is wrapped up in that relationship. However, when they practice non-attachment, they begin to enjoy the relationship fully without desperately clinging to it. Instead of living in fear of what might happen, they focus on appreciating the present moment, the connection they have with the other person, and the joy that relationship brings. They begin to trust that whatever happens, they will be okay. The relationship no longer holds power over their happiness because they're no longer dependent on it for their emotional stability. Non-attachment doesn't mean becoming emotionally distant or not caring for others. Rather, it means approaching life with a sense of openness and understanding that we cannot control everything. We can love others, cherish experiences, and appreciate the present moment, but we must let go of the need to cling to them. This practice of non-attachment ultimately allows us to live with more peace and less fear. Attachment is often rooted in the desire to control outcomes or to hold on to things as a way to protect ourselves from uncertainty. We fear the unknown and try to secure our happiness by clinging to what we have, whether it's relationships, possessions, or achievements. However, the more tightly we cling, the more fearful we become of losing these things. When we shift our focus away from trying to control outcomes and instead embrace life's natural flow, we can face challenges with greater courage and less anxiety. In summary, letting go of attachment is one of the most powerful ways to reduce fear. By practicing non-attachment, we free ourselves from the anxiety of losing what we hold dear. Non-attachment does not mean indifference. It means living with openness, recognizing that the source of our true happiness lies within us, not in the external world. By learning to let go of attachment, we can live with greater peace, embrace the impermanence of life, and face fears with a greater sense of equanimity and confidence. Lesson 6. Cultivate patience, Kanthi. Patience is a core teaching in Buddhism, and it is a powerful antidote to fear. Fear often emerges from our impatience, our desire for immediate results, or the urge to control situations that are inherently uncertain. In modern life, we are frequently conditioned to seek fast solutions and quick fixes, leading us to expect instant gratification. However, the Buddha teaches us that patience allows us to face life's challenges with grace, wisdom, and an understanding that things will unfold as they are meant to. Fear often arises when we are unable to accept uncertainty. When we want things to happen immediately, whether it's solving a problem, achieving a goal, or overcoming a challenge, we become anxious and fearful when results are delayed or outcomes are unclear. We live in a world that celebrates speed and efficiency, but life doesn't always operate on our timeline. The wisdom of patience teaches us that not everything can be rushed, and it encourages us to trust the process. By cultivating patience, we develop the ability to bear discomfort without reacting impulsively. Often, our natural instinct when faced with fear is to react quickly, to avoid, deny, or suppress the uncomfortable feelings that arise. However, when we practice patience, we learn to sit with discomfort and allow it to pass without getting caught up in it. Patience helps us understand that fear, like all emotions, is temporary. The intense feelings of anxiety or dread we experience in a difficult moment will fade with time, and the situation will evolve. This understanding allows us to approach life's challenges with a sense of calm and stability, even when we don't have all the answers right away. One of the primary benefits of cultivating patience is that it provides us with the inner strength to navigate difficult situations. Instead of giving in to fear, we learn to take a step back and assess the situation calmly. We no longer feel the need to control every outcome, but instead we trust that with time and effort, things will resolve themselves. This trust in the natural unfolding of events gives us the courage to persevere, even when things seem unclear or uncertain. For example, consider a situation where you're facing a challenging project at work or a personal dilemma. In the beginning, fear might arise because you don't know how to solve the problem or what the outcome will be. The impatience to resolve the issue immediately can cause stress and anxiety. But when you apply patience, you allow yourself the space to reflect, to learn, and to trust that the answers will come in time. Instead of rushing through the process, you embrace the uncertainty, knowing that the challenge you are facing is temporary and that with persistence, clarity will emerge. Patience also enables us to develop resilience. When we face fear, especially in uncertain situations, it can be tempting to act impulsively, whether that's avoiding the situation altogether, trying to force an outcome, or taking unnecessary risks. However, patience teaches us to remain calm, composed, and measured in our responses. By taking the time to observe the situation, assess our emotions, and reflect on the best course of action, we become more equipped to make thoughtful decisions. This ability to pause before reacting is what makes patience such a powerful tool in overcoming fear. Furthermore, patience encourages a shift in perspective. When we rush to find solutions or control outcomes, we focus on the end result rather than the process. Patience teaches us to value the journey, to be present in the moment, and to learn from the experiences along the way. This shift in focus allows us to reduce the pressure we place on ourselves to immediately fix everything. We can trust that, with time, the situation will resolve itself. And in the meantime, we can continue to grow, learn, and adapt. In summary, patience is a crucial practice for overcoming fear. It helps us accept uncertainty, trust the process, and bear discomfort without reacting impulsively. By cultivating patience, we understand that fear, like all emotions, is temporary and that we have the inner strength to face challenges with wisdom and peace. Instead of rushing to resolve problems or control outcomes, we learn to trust in the unfolding of events and to be present in the process. Patience, then, becomes a powerful tool for cultivating resilience, reducing anxiety, and navigating life's uncertainties with a calm and composed mind. As we've explored throughout this video, the 6 Buddhist teachings on overcoming fear provide us with profound wisdom to transform our relationship with fear. Far from something to fight against, fear is an emotion we can learn to understand, manage, and even transcend. By embracing these teachings, we begin to view fear not as an enemy, but as an opportunity for growth, self-discovery, and transformation. It's important to remember that fear is a natural part of life. Everyone experiences fear at some point, and it is deeply connected to our human condition. However, just because fear is natural doesn't mean it has to control us. Through practices like mindfulness, understanding impermanence, letting go of attachment, and cultivating patience, we can reframe fear. Instead of allowing it to paralyze us or dictate our choices, we can use it as a tool to become more resilient, more aware, and more courageous. Fear, when acknowledged and worked with, becomes a stepping stone toward living a life of freedom, peace, and wisdom. Incorporating the teachings of Buddhism into your life give you the strength and tools to face any challenge with calm and clarity. As we've learned, fear arises when we resist change, cling to outcomes, or feel out of control. But by embracing the fluidity of life, acknowledging fear as a temporary feeling, and cultivating patience and mindfulness, we begin to shift our perspective. With time, we realize that the fear we once thought was so overwhelming is just a passing thought or emotion, not a permanent fixture in our lives. The journey of overcoming fear starts with understanding. When we fully grasp the nature of fear and the teachings that guide us, we unlock the potential to live a life filled with inner peace, balance, and freedom. Fear no longer holds us back, but instead becomes a catalyst for personal growth. You have the power to break free from the grip of fear and live the life you deserve, one that is aligned with your values, your passions, and your purpose. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video on Zen Mind Journey. If you found these lessons helpful and inspiring, don't forget to show your support by hitting that like button, commenting below with your thoughts or questions, and subscribing to our channel. By subscribing, you'll be able to join us on this ongoing journey towards greater wisdom, mindfulness, and personal transformation. Remember, the power to stop your fears and change your life is within you. It all begins with embracing these teachings and integrating them into your everyday life. You are capable of achieving the life of peace and courage you've always dreamed of. Keep learning, growing, and transforming because the journey doesn't end here. Thank you again for being a part of this community, and we look forward to continuing this journey together.